Okay, so we're in the middle of chapter 4, and we're holding the sixth section, and I think in English it's part 21. So now we're going to go into the idea of having bitachon when it comes to schar v'onesh, when it comes to reward, understanding bitachon and reward. It's not so much, it's really going to go into the subject of understanding in general. How does one understand? How does understand, when do we have the reward? How do we understand the reward, and etc. Hold on, let's make sure this is working. Okay. So it says like this. Al berachel kashishi, v'hu bigmul ha'olam hazeh v'haba, the reward we have in this world and the next. Asher yiskeloi, that a person gets or is merited, b'maisim, their deeds hatovim b'olam hazeh, in this world. So I want to go into a few things that he says in the commentary before we go into continuing with the original text. He says, קודם שניכנס לפרטי הביר, יש להקדים הקדמת כללית לחשיבת העיסוק בשכר המובטח בעבור קיום מצוות ומשמעותו. Before we go into details, we have to understand a little bit about reward. ההכרח והביטחון של מעשינו ועבודתנו בעולם הזה יש משמעות. ההכרה, sorry. ההכרה, the recognition and the trust. So here the trust is that our actions and our service in this world have meaning. This is a very fundamental idea. I mean, to say we have to first really accept the idea that bitachon. So here he's saying part of the bitachon is to accept that our avoda and our service is needed. It's required. It has an erech. Bitachlis has not only just it has value, it has a bottom line. Tachlis means it leads to something. That's very important to the Jew when he's serving Hashem, knowing that the service has a reason and has a bottom line. If a person, when he serves Hashem, doing Torah mitzvahs, is missing this foundation, the bitachon, the trust, that there's a reason why we're here and our avodah means something. So a person does, because he says she says the Torah says I have to serve Hashem. I don't know why I'm serving Hashem. What's to make a difference if I'm serving Hashem? Why does Hashem care if I'm going to make a bracha, not going to make a bracha? I'm going to keep Shabbos, I won't keep Shabbos, I'll keep kashrus, I won't keep kashrus, and other things along those lines. So, and a person but does it, so then their whole avoda, their whole approach to what they're doing seems to be very tiring and very difficult. It could be very heavy, like an avodas perach, like slave work that you have to do. And why would you do it? Or so you believe in God and you believe that God gives punishment and reward. And for whatever reason, he wants me to keep these 630 mitzvahs, although I don't understand that. I don't have any passion. I don't see a purpose in it, but my well-being depends on it. So therefore, you look at it as you're doing it because of fear, mamish called yiras einish, the lowest level of fear. Pashat, you don't want to get punished. Machshava kazu, so a person has this mindset, this approach to Torah mitzvahs, you're never properly going to connect to what you're doing, because no matter what you're doing, it's just about getting by, or just about satisfying Hashem so you can get blessings, etc., or not get punished. He says like this: so just like a person has to have bitachon, that God is going to take care of you and everything that you need. So too you have to have trust. That what Hashem wants you to do has a reason and has an everlasting effect. Every mitzvah we do. So we're going to, he's giving a very important hakdama, because before we start tackling what we believe and what we have trust in, we have to have the foundation that our trust is that our voda has meaning. It means before we start understanding God's reward and punishment and having trust that we will get reward, won't get reward, we have to first understand that why are we doing what we're doing. If we're doing what we're doing is because we believe in Hashem. So then it's like what it says about Emunah, a person who has belief before they go into to rob. What does it mean? You know that God is the one who could bless you, and in order to be successful in your robbery, you have to, you could get caught. So you praying to God that you shouldn't get caught. You should be successful. So that's the same idea of believing that your whole purpose in this world of doing Torah mitzvahs is just that you should get reward and punishment. So before we get to that, we have to first have the foundation that the bitachon is not about the reward and punishment, but that whatever we're doing has a reason. And there's not just a reason that we're doing what Hashem wants, but Hashem has a reason why He wants us to do what He's doing, and there's a tachlis and there's a benefit to what we're doing. The Chassidus madgishim, he says like this. In the Chassidus, it emphasizes shaschar amiti shal mitzvah, that when a person wants to understand what is really the reward of a mitzvah, is tamen be'etzem asiyasa, is the mitzvah itself. Like it says, schar mitzvah mitzvah. The mitzvah itself means the when a person is looks at their life and their needs as something totally separate from what Hashem wants, and you just want shidduch, you want a parnasa, you want whatever it is that a person wants. So a person of healing, good social life, healthy social life. These are all important things. No one's saying they're not. But I'm saying you're saying that you're doing what Hashem wants, so Hashem should do what you want. So the schar, the reward, has nothing to do with what you're doing. You ask God, it's like a job, right? A person's job doesn't, the expression, I don't want to bring my job home. Why don't you want to bring your job home? People say that all the time, but why would you not want to bring your job home? We spend 9 hours on it or 12 hours a day on it. Why would it be like, I cannot bring my job home? Because your job really doesn't mean anything to you. Doesn't mean anything to you. It's just a way for you to live in your home. And you're in your home, you don't want to know about your job because it's nothing to do with you. You don't really care about your job. You care enough that it should yield the benefits that you want it to give you, and therefore you don't want to bring it home. They passed a law in Australia, I think, that the boss is no longer allowed to send or cannot expect you to respond to an email or a text after hours. Why? Because I'm not bringing my work home. I have my separate life. So, but when it comes to our mitzvahs, it's not like that. The schar of the mitzvah is the mitzvah. And in order to understand that the reward of the mitzvah is the mitzvah, then you have to understand that the mitzvah itself has meaning. You are driven by the mitzvah. And therefore, your reward is to be able to do the mitzvah. Now, of course, with that comes all the benefits as well. But it's a mindset. That what do I really see in the value of the mitzvah is the mitzvah itself. That's what it means, schar mitzvah mitzvah. Is knowing that when I do a mitzvah, I'm connecting to Hashem. It says, Gili oitzmus haschar tia dafka kan ba'olam hazeh hagashmi. And he says sometimes the reward itself will be only in the physical sense. We'll see it in this world. And there's different levels of reward. And this is what is going to kind of be tackled with the reason why we're giving this Hagdama, this preface to this section of Rabbeinu Bechaya from the text over here, is because he goes into different levels of understanding reward and where does reward actualize. So in Chassidus it says that there's the physical reward that happens now. It says give tzedakah, aseh b'shvil tzedakah, right? Give tzedakah, and it will make you. It's one of the places it says that a recipe for success is by giving tzedakah. So if you want success, give tzedakah. So that's reward that happens mamish ba'olam hazeh in this world. And then you have the world, the schar in Gan Eden when a person passes away. And then there's a third level, there's the schar of the actual mitzvah itself, and that's going to be in a physical sense, in when we see what we've transformed in what we've done. Means in the world to come, meaning in Garden of Eden after a person passes away, is a person is in the light and uses the mitzvahs that they've done as a garment to take in the light of godliness. But when Mashiach comes in the days that he says in the Mashiach and Tchias HaMesim, we're going to actually see what we've accomplished with our mitzvahs. He says, however, yesh schar gam ba'olam hazeh b'Gan Eden. But there's still, like I said, there's also the schar, there's reward in this world. And there's the reward in the Garden of Eden. Meaning to say, what's the Garden of Eden? Makam haneshamas l'mayla, where the souls go after they live in this world. with a real proper reward is going to be when we see what we've accomplished in the time of the resurrection of the dead. He says, "V'kiyim hamitzvus hayehudi mamshech par achshav or ein sofi leilam." Because when a person does a mitzvah today, right now you're accomplishing something. The idea that it's going to be revealed later, just as a revelation, but what has been done is done now. That's why it's important. Therefore, we have to do mitzvahs today. Yehudi shemifanim zois betudas heitev. And why is he saying this? If you want to really be able to properly have joy in your avoda, find meaning. What does it mean to have joy? To find happiness and motivation in your avodas Hashem is knowing that what you're doing now means something now. And therefore he says, and the truth is, to know that you could be connected, the word mitzvah means to connect, is the greatest reward, to know that you could connect to something really alive. Now, putting that as the preface to what he's going to say now, he's going to explain now to us why is it that certain things are told to us in the Torah and certain things are not told to us in the Torah. Certain rewards are told to us, certain things we see now, certain things we don't see now. So he says like this. There's two levels of reward. So there's the reward that we're going to get in this world. And there's the gemul ba'olam haba bilvad is going to be the reward in the world to come. So like we have in this week's parsha, in a few weeks ago parsha B'chakosai, right? It says, "Im b'chakosai telechu," if you keep my mitzvahs, v'asisam osam v'nesati gishmechem b'itam, I'm going to give the rain in its time, and the ground will give forth its growth. And it says other verses, the v'nesati mitar artzechem b'ita, we say in the Shema, God's going to give rain, and you're going to harvest so we have a lot of Torah that talks about the rewards a person gets in this world for doing Torah mitzvahs. And he said like this, some people will be worthy to get both rewards, meaning in this world and the world to come. On one act, it means that one act itself will include both a reward in this world and later in the world in the Garden of Eden. But we don't have exactly to know what exactly is the reward. We have a general reward. We know that if we're, like, for instance, he's going to go into, he's going to say that there's certain things, the negative, we're very clear, right? If you transgress this, you get lashes. If you transgress that, then you get death by Bezdin. If you transgress this, you get death by God. If you transgress that, you get kares. If you transgress this, you have to pay double, you have to pay triple, you have to pay 4 times. We have a whole list of things of punishments. We don't have so clear the rewards in this world. We just know, in general, God's going to bless the rain. So he says, we know that in general, doing good things gives us reward. In this world, we don't have clear the rewards we're going to get specifically. Right? He's making a good. He's asking a good argument. Number one is we have very clear punishments for our transgressions. Why don't we have clear rewards? God says, why isn't it clear? Just like there's witnesses and warnings, and then you get lashes. There's witnesses and warnings, and then you get death. There's God forbid. And there's witnesses and warnings, then you have to pay a fine. So hold on a second. I just want to make sure. If there's any Rebecca or Ariel, if there's anything wrong with the feed, let me know, because last night we had a problem with the feed. So he says like this. But Kifish bears a maisim, as it says, Shechai v'oisais, and a person who does transgressions, it's very clear. It says Skila Sreifa Hergechenek. If you do certain transgressions, you get paid, you get punished with stoning, burning, beheading, or choking. Then it says there's malchus, there's lashes. Kare sumisa, there's cutting off or death by bezdin. Tashlumi kefil, there's sometimes we have to pay double. We have fines, we have to pay chaymesh, a fifth, we have to pay double. But tashlumi arba v'chamisha, sometimes we have to pay 4 or 5 times. But nezik shor bar v'shein veish, what happens if our property does damage? The Torah tells us exactly when you have to pay full, when you have to pay half. If you hurt someone, what is the right? If a person hurts someone, there's baishas. The Torah gives us a whole list of punishments, exactly how much we have to pay and what do we have to do. If you shame someone, if you say spread lies about someone, okay. So he says like this. Number one is he says, when it comes to the positive, we get a general idea. Do God's will, and you're going to get a blessing in this world. God's going to give rain, give what he needs to give. When it comes to the negative, we have a lot of specifics. Again, everything we do, especially things that are damaging the people, have specific punishments. A man who slanders his wife, or a person who slanders someone else, a person who embarrasses someone. Right? The Torah puts a value and tells us how we're supposed to figure how much we have to pay. We're talking about damages. We're not talking about donations, where the Torah tells us when a person wants to make a donation to the temple, how much he or she has to pay. We're talking about pashut things that have to be rectified for your actions and how you fix them. So that the Torah says clear. He doesn't go into why. The Torah doesn't tell us clearly the benefits we get for the specific things that we're going to do to the measurement, like it does in the punishment. But then he says, when it comes to the world to come, the punishment and the world to come, that has Moshe Rabbeinu he says Hashliach, he means Moshe Rabbeinu, has not told us clearly, and he says there's 7 reasons why not. So he says there's 7 reasons on why we're not going to be able to know exactly the punishments we have in the afterlife. I'm going to talk about the afterlife mainly. And he's going to give the reasons like this. Number one, number one is, he says, because our soul without the body is not something we're familiar with. We can't talk about things that we're not familiar with. And this is a deep concept. It runs very deep in the conversation of Bitachon. Meaning to say is, a lot of the spiritual talk that we talk about of benefits or the positive or the negative, or things that are difficult in our life, and we try to lift ourselves up. Let's say, lift yourself out of the space of the difficulty. You said you're trying to get out of your body the pain that your mind is feeling or your body is feeling, but you're in your body and you're in your mind. And so therefore, just like he's saying you can't talk about the reward or punishment because it's things that are going to happen to you after you're alive, and therefore you're not familiar with your soul outside of your body. So that's true then, and it's true now too. Just like we're not familiar to talk about what's going to be in the afterlife, what exactly does it mean hell, right? We don't know exactly what hell means. When we say hell and heaven, like just the basics, what does hell and heaven mean? We don't really understand. So Ram Nachmanish would give us an example and say that study Job and do it 1,000 times, and you'll know how bad hell is. So, but that's not really going to give us a clear understanding of what it's talking about. He says, why? Because we don't. It's something connected to the soul, not to the body, and therefore the body is not familiar. So there's no point in talking about it. But I'm just saying is the same thing goes on the reverse. In this world, the pain and suffering we have is our body, a soul in our body, and therefore we have to have a strategy for that. Kol shekain, because it's impossible for us to understand what pleasure our soul gets when it leaves its body, or what pain it gets. So we can't talk about. So if God has punishments or reward, pleasure and pain, so to say, God forbid, for the soul in the afterlife, we can't describe it now because it's not something we could identify with. But someone who does understand this, we find hints about it in literature. For instance, like it says in the famous prophecy of Yeshua Kohen Gadol, right? So Yeshua Kohen Gadol, we read this on Baloscha, we read this on Chanukah. It says, the God says to Yeshua ben Yehoitzadok, God talks to Yehoitzadok and he tells him, I'm going to place you as a person who walks amongst those who stand. So he's talking about a spiritual idea of his being a person of movement amongst those who stand still, which is talking about the angels. So he says, the Metzudas David says on that, and the Metzudas David says that you should know there's reward in the afterlife for those who move amongst those who stand. He says, Haftacha zu nitana l'mi shedargas haruchnis gavayu muskul lahavin musagamela. You could only talk these things to someone who could understand them, could identify how this is a blessing. Yeshua, Kohen Gadol, was on a refined level that when God explained him, I'm going to place you of a person of movement amongst those who stand, that talked to him. He understood what that meant. And we can't be talking about that this is a situation when the soul is in the body, because it's talking about the soul. It says, and therefore he's talking about something that happens in the afterlife, because he's like in the angels, amongst the angels, and the angels don't have bodies, and therefore it's something that was hinted to Yeshua. God was hinting to him the reward he's going to have after death. Then his soul is going to be similar to the form of an angel. It's going to be refined, simplistic, and not going to have the needs of a body. The things that he's going to benefit, he's explaining to him, the purities the soul is going to experience based on your actions in this world. Now, when a person acts in this world in a certain way, the soul is more refined, the soul is more spiritual, the soul is more holy, and that isn't. And for Yeshua Kohen Gadol, that was speaking to him, for him to understand how this would be something that makes sense as the reward and punishment. So number one, he says the reason why we don't talk about the reward and punishment in the afterlife, describing it like we do pretty much close to detail in this world, is because it's something that we can't understand. So therefore, it's not information that we could process. Number two, we're going to go to 7 of these, and we're not going to finish all 7 today. The idea basically is, what do we want to walk? What does he want? What does Rabbeinu Chai want us to walk away with? So it's not an easy question to answer. I mean, so what are we discussing here? Like what's happening? So we understand why we're discussing why we don't have reward or understand the reward or punishment in the world to come. What's that mean? So the idea is this is a publication of Bitachon, of trust. And like you said before, the trust in this case that we're talking about here is the trust to know that what we've done makes a difference. And what we've done makes a difference, and therefore there's reward and punishment. If you're not making a difference, then you're not doing anything. So you're not doing anything positive, or you're not doing anything negative. There's no place for reward and punishment almost. But if there's a place for reward and punishment, is because we have to understand that it's not just that we're doing what Hashem wants and we don't understand what it is, and we're looking at it as a vodas paracha, but we know that there's meaning to what we're doing. And on top of that is, because there's meaning, Hashem has specific rewards, and not all the rewards is something we understand. So sometimes a person, there's many stories like this that's brought down in the Gemara. For instance, he doesn't mention them here, but you have the famous story of Rabbi Chanina Mendoza. So what's the story of Rabbi Chanina Mendoza? Rabbi Chanina Mendoza is a great sage. Lives in the times of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, tremendous sage. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said he's like a servant who's always by the king, and anything he could always address the king, meaning Hashem. But he himself suffered tremendously in this world. Poverty, very difficult. And at one point, his wife says to him, rightfully so, she says to him, "You help everyone, but why can't you help us? Everyone comes to you with their problems, and you help, you speak, and they get miracles, and you pray. What about us? We have nothing. Every day is a challenge to put food on our table." So he went and davened to Hashem. And he davens to Hashem, and a hand stretches down with a gold foot of a table, which had a lot of value to it because it was gold and full of diamonds, decorated with diamonds and stones. So enough for him and his wife and his family to live comfortably for a long time. So God says, "You want? Here." The hand stretches down from heaven and gives him a golden leg. He gives it to his wife and says, "Here, cash it in. You ask, here I deliver." And then she has a dream that they're sitting on a table in heaven, a table with 3 legs, because there's a leg missing. And she says, "Where's the 4th leg?" So the voice in heaven says, "Well, we gave it to you in this world. You wanted money, so I needed to take it from somewhere. So we took it from the world to come, and we gave it here." So when she saw that dream, she said, no, thank you. And so she tells her husband to give it back. And her wish is his command. So he davens, and the hand comes back and takes it away. So the famous the Gemara says that the second miracle is greater than the first miracle because God doesn't gives, he doesn't take back. But in this case, even Rabbi Yochanan took back. But what's the point? Well, that's the point in the story. The point of the story is that she's in this space of this world, and she's suffering in this space in this world, and she needs it to be better. And so she says, "See, Davin." So God does a tremendous miracle. He takes something that's so holy and spiritual from the afterlife, and he turns it, like anything gets turned into a physical thing, and it gets turned into physical value here in this world. And he says, "Fine, but if it's here, it's not there." And in her great wisdom, she understands that if it's that I don't want it to, I in the bigger picture, I don't want to be short over there. So therefore, I'll suffer over here. And that's a little bit what Rabbi Yochanan, what Rabbeinu Chai is getting into over here. That in order to for a person to connect to that idea, to the wife of Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa, is you have to be in the mind space of both worlds. And that's not easy. That's very hard. And so I'm not sure if how much easier it is afterwards, after we study what we're studying now. But that's what he's trying to accomplish of it. And that's why he's going to go into details to understand why we possibly, that we're not on the level of Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa's wife to understand this, but how it is so. So the first one, as he said, is that the reward is given to someone who understands. Second thing he says like this: when we have, there's another. Here he says is that the reason why we're not described what it is because there's certain things that are written and there's certain things that are tradition. And this falls into tradition. These are things that come down word of mouth, so to say, prophet to prophet, student to teacher to student. Says we have it from the prophets. And it's understood from certain individuals. And therefore the Torah doesn't talk about the afterlife reward. He says, because just like we don't have all the details of how we do a mitzvah, we don't talk about the reward and punishment in the afterlife. Why? Because there's tradition about it. And like I said, now we have tradition, we have Gemaras, we have things that are. And what is the point of this answer? He's not avoiding the question. What he's saying is that what's the value of the tradition versus, let's say, something that's written clear. When it's written clear, sometimes it's written. What can you do? That's what's written. When it comes down in tradition, it comes down like when you have a story like the story of the wife of Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. So you have to try on a certain level to imagine you're that woman who's able who's holding a gold foot that will take care of her problems in this world. She's holding a golden ticket. She's holding, pass go and collect $200. She's really holding the opportunity to make life a lot easier for her in this world. And it's not going to come at a cost in this world. You have sometimes it comes at a cost at this world. It's going to come at a cost in the afterlife. And she's able to make the conscious decision not to. And I don't even know. We could have a 24-hour conversation about if she's right. If let's say, if you want to analyze it from a different perspective. So she's looking at what's better for her and her reward. So she's saying, I could either have the reward now in dollars and cents, or I could have it in a security account, for a retirement fund, which is when I retire from this world. And I'm going to have the spiritual benefit, something that's totally spiritual. It's not a gold leg that I could buy food in the afterlife, because there's no food in the afterlife. It's a spiritual gift. So a person could say, well, one second, if my job is in this world to be productive in this world, hayom lasosam, I'm supposed to do in this world, and the afterlife is just a world of reward. Is it worth it? Maybe I can be more productive in this world if I had things easier. So it's not an easy conversation to have. So that's why it comes down to tradition. We have to understand, is this the right answer to the question? And that's also where Bitachon is. Bitachon is the trust. It means you have to have trust about these things. She had trust that was the right decision to make. Number 3 is, she says, because the fisha umma b'matzav sichlus v'chayser tvuna, mashaloi nela min sefer, It's like this. I'm going to read with the commentary. He says like this. Am Yisrael when the Jewish people left Egypt, they were like adolescents, they were like children, lacking any proper understanding. So he says, Matzif toidasam haya yored b'yoser, their knowledge was very limited. And their comprehension was very limited and physical, about physical things. They couldn't understand it then. If Moshe would talk to them about spiritual benefits, that wouldn't speak to them. They were like a child. If you try to give a child, gift a child with an adult reward, the child can't connect to that. You tell the child you're going to get a candy, you can get a toy, you can get $5. These are things that the child can understand. But if you tell the child that studying is going to bring knowledge and you're going to be wise and smart, or you're going to have connection, you're going to be able to comprehend things, that the child doesn't know what you're talking about. That's not going to translate to reward and punishment. So therefore, the Jewish people were like that after they left Egypt. Moshe couldn't talk about esoteric issues with them. It was too far for them. It wouldn't speak to them. It wouldn't motivate them to do anything, like it wouldn't motivate a child. So therefore, how did God treat them? As a compassionate father would with a child. If a parent wants to educate a child in something that's refined, like the prophet says, we were like a nar. The Jewish people were like a nar, and God loves us, and therefore He spoke to us in things that we could understand. If a father wants to educate a child in his youth or her youth, and if you can try to speak to the child about things that doesn't talk to the child, at that time it's not going to be productive. So you can't talk about higher levels of achievement through Torah mitzvahs if it's not going to speak to the person. If a parent or teacher tells the child, the student, go through the difficulty of education because there's benefit in education for itself, so the child would say, I'm not accepting this. It won't be attracted to it because the child's mind doesn't relate to that. But if the parent promises something that benefits the child now, if it gives them food or something, a gift, clothing, an iPhone, or says, if you don't keep Torah mitzvahs, then you're going to get punished. You're going to go to the corner. You're not going to be able to use your phone. You're not going to go to the game. Whether it's punishments, different types of punishments. The only thing the father and the teacher could do is use things that are tangible and now, and speak to the child now. The things that he says like this. So therefore, it says, you have to give him or her things that the child could relate to now from their world. You have to be able to talk to the strength of the child, what the child understands. Is he says, if you do that, then the child could be educated. The child could be on board for it. And as the child gets older and the child's mind grows, then they'll understand the true purpose of their education. It's not about getting reward, punishment, getting a toy or getting a toy taken away. And then because you've already been educated, you're going to continue in the path of the education. And no longer you're going to be motivated to do what's right for the candies and the toys, but you're going to be motivated for the purpose itself. And this is going to be a benefit for the child in this type of education. And therefore, God did the same thing. He wasn't going to talk to us about things that that we couldn't relate to. The Kach Habar Yisrael, so to Hashem. Shidla Sa'uma, when he took the nation, the Imalag Bigmul Va'inish La'alter talked about the rewards they're going to have right away, like we learned about in the past few weeks of Parsha, including this week's Parsha. If for this nation, I mean the Jewish people, to be ready to listen, and eventually, that when the nation gets older, when we become more mature, more educated, and more refined, then we're going to start understanding the benefits that are waiting for us in the world to come. And then you will be able to try to connect and do things for the right reasons. So again, what he's saying over here is, I'm going to just go a little further and then just continue next class in the ideas of the reward and punishments. He says like this. The bottom line is, like it says in Pirkei Avos, that we should be, this is the idea of kabel pras. When I think Seiche says, don't be a person who serves the master for reward. You have to be able to talk to something that motivates a person. And motivating today is, for instance, lunch and learn, right? Everyone knows lunch and learn. What's lunch and learn? Is first of all, so a person has to do lunch anyway, so might as well learn while they're doing lunch. But also, there's a lot of things that motivate a person to join a class or to join a program, right? So you have benefits. We always have benefits. So the benefits has to see something that talks to me now. And therefore, Hashem also withheld certain information from the Jewish people initially. So we should be able to be motivated now. And eventually, the idea is that if you're never motivated, you're never going to be on board. But even if you're motivated for the wrong reasons or for child reasons, adolescent reasons, in the beginning, you could, just like you grow, you'll grow in your motivation. But you have to at least to connect in the beginning. It has to sometimes be with childish things. The kachua davar mashem because of and so too is when it comes to Hashem, when he talks to us about the tangible things of the benefits of doing mitzvahs, or the reward or punishment for not doing mitzvahs, are things that have to be like it says, deeper Adam. Even when God, it says also when the pasuk talks about that's also why when the Torah talks about God, it says God's hand or God's anger. It talks about things that we can understand. So just like when we talk about God, we talk about things we can understand. So too when it comes to reward and punishment, we talk about things that we can understand. And therefore, initially, although that's not the reason, and there's a greater reward and there's deeper understanding. So far we learned three reasons. The first reason is that most people can't. The reward and punishment in the afterlife are things that are about the soul, not the body, and therefore, when the soul and the body are together, it's not something that we can understand. Second thing is, he says that there are unless there's refined people that can understand that. Second one he says is that we have the traditions, and the traditions that we have from the Navi, and therefore it's not written. Not everything that is not written means it wasn't given down in tradition. And the third thing he says is because in education, that's how we have to go. We have to speak to people as they are. And therefore, you have to talk to motivate things. We have to motivate people with things that motivate them now. And therefore, eventually, the hope is that as people mature, what even if we were started our motivation on small things, eventually will grow in both our motivation and our understanding of our purpose in this world in Torah mitzvahs. But the foundation we have to understand to all this is that we have to have bitachon and trust that what we're doing in this world has a reason, and what we're doing in this world is accomplishing something, not just doing things, but we're actually bringing godliness, light down. That's the idea. When we do a mitzvah, we're bringing light into this world. We're turning this world of separation to Hashem Echad, so that the world is one with the godliness of Hashem. All right. If there's any questions, this is a good time.
I have a question.
Go
Regarding the story, I'm just thinking about the story with the table, with the leg of the table. So, is it true that um I think I once asked you this before, but is it true according to this that anytime we ask Hashem for a bracha for something we don't have, that he's kind of taking the zchuyos or the schar from somewhere else, like from us, either in this world or in the next world?
Okay, yeah, you did ask that question, and I think you did not. I don't remember what I answered, but it seems like it depends. It seems like it's not. There's not a straightforward answer to that. It seems like So the question is, what's the right approach? We don't know. So that's the real question. The real question is that if it's an absolute thing, so then that's one thing. And not again, I'm not sure it's the wrong thing to ask. I'm not 100% certain that depending why you're asking, I'm not 100% certain if it's wrong to ask. And the Rebbe's kind of view is that never mind the checks and balances of schus. That I have coins to cash in. If I cash them in now, I'm cashing them for. It's like you go to the carnival and you get tickets. You could buy this, you could buy that, you could cash them in for different toys. So if you once you lose the tickets and you get the toy, you lose the tickets. The Rebbe's first of all view is that there's two in reward. There's two ideas. Number one is there's like an expense account, like when a person's on a business trip, so it's not, you're not losing from your salary when you're on an expense account. And an expense account is, what's the accountant check? The accountant is checking if this is actually part of an expense of your job, or is this a luxury that you shouldn't have done, right? So when you come back with your receipts, they say, well, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Where's the value for the company? How is this part of your business trip? And obviously, there's a broad way for that. Yes, an hotel, how expensive the hotel. So there's the idea of expense account in this world where we're doing Hashem's work. We're out in the field, right? King in the field. We're out in the field. And on the field, we have to have an expense account, and it's nothing to do with schar owners. That's to do with Hashem providing for us what we could do. And then there's the reward for the doing like this, which would say what you would call the salary or the benefits that come with your job. Similar to that. And so when a person has a necessity, something to push and move forward with in this life, I'm not sure if that's called cashing in as chus and taking it away from the table. From that story, it's hard to understand. She didn't ask for a summer home. She asked for food on her table. So she was asking for bare necessities, and so it's hard to understand clearly to apply what I'm saying to this story. But I think it really depends, and I think means the question is like this: fundamentally, if you use the analogy of an expense account, you'll never get that money back. Meaning to say, is if a person goes on a trip and has no receipts to cash in. It's not going to be like at the end you say, well, look, I didn't, I saved the company money when I went traveling. I should get a larger salary. I'm not sure that's going to work in your negotiations. The boss will say, well, if you had expenses, we will pay for it. If you don't have expenses, you don't have expenses. So same thing over here. I'm not sure if you're not going to cash in, then you're going to get reward later. In her story, it seems like it was like that they were taking a chair a foot away from her table. But I don't know if that applies to every situation and every person. And therefore, I don't know if it's wrong. Therefore, the bottom line is if it's wrong, when you're saying if a person wants a bracha and you say you're scared to ask for the bracha because you want to save your reward for another time, you have to. I think the best way to make a decision on this is to get real with the idea how filling the needs that you need are for your job in this world. I mean to say, if a person says, I know that for me to Hashem, to be married is how my next stage is to do dir Bitachon and to make my place in this world. So you're not asking for a reward. You're asking to be able to do what you have to do in this world. A person says, I need God to please help me with parnasa, so I could have the mindset and the headspace to be able to do what I have to do in this world. We have the famous story that Alter Rebbe said when the person complained. He says, you're complaining because you do what you have to do. God isn't going to do what He has to do. So in this also becomes bitachon. Means when the person feels hopeless and is crying out and saying, I can't move forward because I have all these things. What did the Alter Rebbe say? You have a job to do your job. God has a job to do to take care of you. So you have to do your job. Trust that God is going to do His job. And when the person needed to plug into that idea. And the Rebbe continues when he tells over the story that the person ended up becoming fabulously wealthy. He complained about he had no parnasa. He ended up becoming fabulously wealthy, but Hashem wanted him to have bitachon in that idea. that Hashem, it's God's responsibility to take care of you, and you have to do what you have to do. So again, it's hard to learn from the story exactly what to do, and I think the best attitude is the mindset. I have a job in this world to be a Jew, not just to do Torah mitzvahs, but that my Torah mitzvahs has a reason, and that is to bring light in this world. And every time I see someone, I want to be able to give tzedakah, and every time I see someone, I want to be able to help them, and I want to have a large Shabbos table so people can come eat, enjoy, and experience Shabbos. I want to have a nice family so I could bring young children into this world in Torah mitzvahs. So when you come into Hashem, not as a trade-off, but as I need to move forward in my purpose in this world and have faith that Hashem is going to take care of what He has to do, I don't think that's a problem.
Okay. And also, we don't know the amount of schar for each mitzvah, right? Like that's not something we can really think about.
I mean, there is things we do talk about, testing God in certain mitzvahs in this world for schar in this world. There are certain mitzvahs that we get in this world a reward. But in general, yeah, it's hard to hold a ledger of exactly telling God I did this and this mitzvah, you owe me this and this. It's usually not a good idea because God also holds a ledger, and it's
Right.
not.
But like if let's say somebody has a really, really hard time doing a certain kind of mitzvah, like it makes them like, for example, for me, like visiting hospitals or visiting sick people or the elderly makes me so uncomfortable. But if there's a need and I go do it, so like the schar for something like if you have a tremendous amount of resistance or difficulty with a certain mitzvah, do you get more schar for doing that mitzvah?
You definitely do. I mean, that it's hard to yeah. I mean, the Rebbe always talks about this many times, that there's when you have when you don't want to do something and you should be doing something, again, a person's not running around to look and say, where can I get myself uncomfortable for God?
Right.
That's a famous thing we learned about Avram Avinu. It says, the Rebbe says, it's a very interesting thing. It talks about the difference between Rabbi Akiva and Avram Avinu. It says Rabbi Akiva used to say, when could I die for God? When could I experience Mesiras Nefesh? Masa Yavai Vekimenu. When can I experience me? He wanted to experience Mesiras Nefesh. He did. At 120 years old, the Romans combed him to death. But he said Shema Yisrael. In Chassidus it says that's very high madrega. But Avram Avinu wasn't like that. Avram Avinu didn't wake up in the morning and say, how could I die for God? He said, I have to do what I have to do. If it means that I have to do Mesiras Nefesh, I'll do Mesiras Nefesh. I'll do whatever I have to do. So I think that's the same idea. I mean, your attitude is not to look for difficult things or to challenge yourself. We say every day in davening in the morning, Al Taviyel Deinisayin, don't test me. We don't want to be tested. David Melch asked to be tested. It wasn't a good thing. We don't ask to be tested. We don't look for it. I mean, and the same thing applies to this idea. We're not looking to do things that are uncomfortable. We're looking to do what has to be done. And if we're uncomfortable, we do it anyways. Of course, the schar is tremendous. And that's a sign that there's a big Yetzer Hara there. And Hashem wants you to overcome the Yetzer Hara. Sometimes it's in tzedakah. Sometimes it's, like you said, doing things like that you're uncomfortable with. Sometimes it's buying kosher food, whatever it is, keeping Shabbos. But when you're feeling this tremendous pressure against doing what you want to do, it could be a sign that Hashem wants you to go through this moment. But you don't look for it. You're not looking to
Right.
yourself in that.
Okay. And my last question is, are we gonna miss this year on Rosh Hashanah and Sukkot?
I have to check the schedule. Maybe we'll reschedule it to some early. I could do earlier, maybe on certain days. I have to look at the calendar, and I'll post it tomorrow with my Thursday listing of classes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks so
Tov.
much.
Have a Chag Sameach and Shana Tova.
Amen. Ksiva v'chasima tova.
Take care.